Physical media man, physical media man, physical media man. What'd you buy? Was it something good?
What's up, guys? Physical Media Man back here again for another Physical Media Man Monday video. I am trying to get caught up on some movie reviews. I think some of these are from December of last year. It's currently November, so I figured it'd be a good time to talk about some of these that I guess I never talked about last year, and get the ones I want to keep back on the shelf and try to get some of this other stuff sold. But yeah, so I'll have some recommendations for Christmas movies, I guess. So win-win. So before I get started, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, leave feedback, do all that good stuff down below. I'll leave the links to my Instagram page, my Physical Media Man Store Instagram page, my Facebook page for the Physical Media Man / Physical Media Man Store, my Facebook page for non-media related items, the Hodgepodge Garage, my email, my eBay, my Twitter, and my Letterboxd account. And probably a lot of these aren't on there, but I have been trying to do better on that. I did pretty well in October, so hopefully I can continue on and get back to the monthly movie reviews. We haven't been watching as much stuff, so that's probably part of the reason, but I'm just going to go ahead and get started. First up is Chef. I'm a big fan of this one. Really enjoyed it. Giving it the 5 out of 5. Jon Favreau written and directed. Also stars. Great music. I bought the soundtracks after watching this. Jon Favreau plays a chef. Obviously it's called Chef, but he's working at this restaurant he doesn't exactly care for, and he ends up he's having some personal problems with his wife. They're divorced at the beginning of the movie, so they're not together, or they're at least having problems, and there's a lot of things going on, and he has a food critic come to his restaurant, and he gives him a bad review, and he goes off on him. So which is played by Oliver Platt, who I usually like, and he's good in this. John Leguizamo is really good in this, as well as Scarlett Johansson, Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. But yeah, this is a really good film. There's actually a TV show on Netflix, because he really got into food after this movie, and it's really good. Definitely recommend that one if you haven't seen it. Next up, from the Warner Archive collection, stuff falls over. We got Margaret Sullivan and James Stewart in The Shop Around the Corner. And this is basically the same premise as You've Got Mail. Basically, that's where they got the idea for that movie. And this one is really good. This is a Christmas film. So same concept. They don't get along, but they have a pen pal, and it's each other. Very enjoyable. I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. Definitely plan on keeping it. Good Christmas watch. If you haven't seen it, definitely worth checking out. And yeah, good movie. Next up is Gremlins and Gremlins 2. Really enjoyed Gremlins on the revisit. Gremlins 2 is also enjoyable, but not quite as good. It's more out there, and there's some crazier things that happen. But Gremlins is a classic. I'll give it a 4 out of 5, and give Gremlins 2 a 3 out of 5. And then we got my favorite, Home Alone. I've talked about this before. It's a classic if you haven't seen it. I don't know how you couldn't have, but 5 out of 5 for me, one of my favorites. We got Christmas Vacation. This just got a recent 4K. I'll probably just end up keeping this Blu-ray. But I've been watching this the last few years, and it's hilarious. And always enjoy watching that one. Next up is Fat Man with Mel Gibson playing Santa. This was different. Worth watching, I would say, at least. I'll probably keep it. But just a different kind of take on Santa and everything. Next up is Superman Red Sun. This is basically if Superman came about during the Cold War in Russia, how he would be instead of being from Kansas. Good concept. It just kind of was boring and not as good as I thought it was going to be. I think I'm going to keep it at least for now because I got a good deal on it. But yeah, I was hoping for more out of that one. Next up is Christmas in Connecticut. This was a first time watch last year, and I had a lot of fun with this one too. Barbara Stanwyck plays a journalist or columnist, and she writes a column for a magazine, and acts like she knows a lot about cooking, and she acts like she has some farm or house out in the country or something, but really she's just in the city and doesn't know any of this stuff. One of her friends is a chef, and he helps her with these articles. So somehow they go to her boss asks her to go to Connecticut and have her make him this big Christmas meal, and of course she doesn't know how to do any of it. So a lot of funny things happen, and there's some side plots, and this one was pretty good. I definitely recommend checking it out. Next up was Deck the Halls. So I think this is the last one of the around Christmas time watches, with Danny DeVito, Matthew Broderick. This is somewhat recent, 2006. So they're neighbors, and Danny DeVito is all about, he wants I think them to be able to see his Christmas lights from space, and so he's going all out. And Broderick was the previous like Christmas king of the town, so he's like up in arms that DeVito's trying to outmatch him basically. So they kind of are fighting back and forth. It was pretty enjoyable. Not as good as some of the others, but worth watching. I guess I kind of stopped giving scores. I didn't write any down, so. Next up was one from MVD in their marquee collection. I saw the trailer. This is based on a true story, and I thought it was going to be better than I thought it was. It was directed by Sidney Lumet, starring Vin Diesel and Find Me Guilty. So he's basically a mobster who is on trial, and he represents himself. So, and then the other attorney is Peter Dinklage, who's good in his role too. But yeah, based on the true story of Fat Jack DiNorscio. So yeah, it was, I don't know. I just thought it was going to be better than it was. So I'll probably get rid of that one. Next up was Sylvester Stallone and Nighthawks. Glad to finally watch this one. This is a Shout Select release. Number 6 in the line. Very good Stallone movie. Early filmography of Rutger Hauer as the bad guy and Wolfgar. Just a really good premise. So when Europe's most feared terrorist explosively announces his presence in Manhattan, 2 elite undercover cops, Stallone and Billy D. Williams, he's also good in this, are assigned to stop him before he strikes again. But the ruthless terrorist has other plans for the city and the detectives. So a very good thriller, very, very well acted, very good plot. Definitely recommend this one. I would give this a good 4 out of 5 stars. It came out in 81, and it's one of the better. There's not much to take away from it like some of the other Stallone stuff that I definitely enjoy, but this is a more well-rounded film. I don't think we watched the last one yet, but watched at least the first 3 Lethal Weapon movies. Great buddy cop movies with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. Definitely recommend those if you haven't seen them. I don't know why that got there. Next up is Wild. This DVD will be for sale. I plan on upgrading to the Blu-ray. This was one I'd been putting off for a long time, and because it's similar to Into the Wild, but also different. But you have to be in the right headspace to watch it. It's very intense in times. Reese Witherspoon is very good in it. She's really phenomenal in this role. Does a great job. The music's really good. I ended up buying the soundtrack after watching the film. It really does a good job being another character in the film. It's based on the best-selling book by Cheryl Strayed, and it's based on her, so based on a true story. Really, really good. She has a lot of things going on and ends up deciding to walk the Pacific Crest Trail. So, yeah, definitely recommend that one. If you haven't seen it, I would also give that probably a 4 out of 5. Next up, we revisited one of my favorites. Still held up pretty well. We got Leo, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, and Mark Wahlberg in The Departed, a Martin Scorsese film. So rookie cop Billy Costigan grew up in crime. That makes him the perfect mole, the man on the inside of the mob run by boss Frank Costello. So yeah, if you haven't seen this one, it won Best Picture. It's really good. Yeah, one of my favorites, 5 out of 5. Next up is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in Walking Tall. This is one of his earlier roles. This is the MVD release. I think I have a regular release, so if I do, I might have already moved it. I'm pretty sure I do, so if I do, that's for sale if you're interested. Also has Johnny Knoxville, who's pretty funny in this one. This is a remake based on a true story. Yeah, so he was in the war somewhere or in the military, and he comes back to his hometown, and things have changed quite a bit, so he ends up becoming the sheriff and trying to turn things around. One of the early good Rock movies. I really enjoy this one. Still holds up well. Definitely recommend it if you're a fan of him, and if you haven't seen it, I would give it a 3 out of 5 just because it's got some room that it could have been a little bit better, but it's a really fun watch and I like it. So next up is The Last Blockbuster, a documentary. This was pretty enjoyable about the last blockbuster that's in operation in Bend, Oregon. It just kind of brought back some memories of going to my local Blockbuster growing up. But it was also interesting with how this one stayed alive and what they do in their day-to-day operations. Definitely worth checking out. If you haven't seen on the documentary scale, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Next up, we got a Michael Bay film, 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, starring John Krasinski, based on the true story. When everything went wrong, 6 men had the courage to do what was right. Actually pretty well directed by Michael Bay. This is a really good war film. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend checking it out. The cast is really good. The action's really good. It went pretty fast for being 144 minutes. So yeah, if you haven't checked this one out yet, definitely do so. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Giving some high scores on these. Next up, we watched the original West Side Story. We were going to try to watch the new one, haven't got around to that yet. But this is part of my Best Picture winter collection. This one in 1961. But yeah, it's a musical about kind of like a Romeo and Juliet story almost, with some rival gangs going back and forth. The music's pretty enjoyable. I've actually seen the play, I think in Chicago, if I remember right. But I feel like I enjoyed it more watching this this movie. I don't know why exactly. I feel like I just got the story better. So, but yeah, really well done. Definitely recommend this one if you haven't seen it and you like musicals. I'm not a huge fan, but this one's definitely worth seeing. It is fairly long at 153 minutes, but I feel like most musicals are, and I'll give that a 3.5. Next up is The Big Green. I didn't watch this a ton growing up, maybe just a handful of times, but wanted to get this Disney Movie Club exclusive for the collection. I didn't even know Steve Guttenberg was in it until we watched it again. So nothing ever happens in Elma, Texas, at least not until British school teacher Anna Montgomery arrives. Determined to motivate her students, she decides to form a soccer team. She enlists the aid of out-of-shape sheriff Tom Palmer, played by Guttenberg, who agrees to coach the team so he can beat his old nemesis, the ruthless coach of the big city bullies, the Knights. Yeah, it was fun. I'd give this a 3 out of 5 as well. Just like I didn't have the nostalgia for it, but it was a fun watch. Next up, I did watch a lot growing up. We got Tom and Huck with Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Brad Renfro, where they play Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. Still enjoyable. Of course, I have the nostalgia for it. I would give it a 3.5 out of 5. A really fun revisit. Next up, really enjoyed this one. This is written and directed by Josh Radnor. It's almost a love story to his alma mater. I can't remember where it is. Some school in Ohio, I think, where he's from. And it's filmed on that campus. So it's got him in it, as well as Elizabeth Olsen, Richard Jenkins, and Allison Janney. So he goes back to this liberal arts school because his old college professor, Richard Jenkins, is retiring. So he goes back and visits the school and meets Elizabeth Olsen there. Yeah, I really thought this was good, giving it a 4 out of 5. Definitely plan on keeping it. Feel like this one should be talked about some more. I'm a big fan of him from How I Met Your Mother, and I've watched some of his other stuff that's not How I Met Your Mother, and this is definitely the best out of that. Next up was directed by John Landis. This is 35 in the Shout Select line, starring Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Pfeiffer. Thought this was going to be better than it was. We got Into the Night. So, unhappily married, unsatisfyingly employed, and unsurprisingly depressed aerospace engineer and insomniac Ed Oken needs to get away. But getting away proves to be no easy feat when Ed arrives to the airport and a gorgeous smuggler, Diana, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, leaps into his car, pursued by 4 killers. Chased across the landscape of a truly mythical Los Angeles, Ed and Diane will encounter an endless array of intriguing nocturnal characters. Yeah, and there's some cool cameos in there, but this movie is only 115 minutes, but it seemed like it was 3 hours. There are some funny parts, some good scenes and things, and I just felt like it was boring a lot of the runtime. So because of that, I'll give it a 2.5, and I do plan on getting rid of this. Next up was another one I didn't care for too much. I feel like I just had the wrong mindset going into it. It's written and directed by John Singleton, who did Boys in the Hood and some other similar titles, and this one is also kind of similar to those. We got Poetic Justice. And when I say that, it's just not as very... I thought it was going to be more chick flickish than it was. It was a good film. I just didn't really like it too well. But it was a lot more... There was no real laughs. It was a lot more serious. And, I mean, it was good. I just didn't like it too much. So Tupac's in it, as well as Regina King. And Janet Jackson, obviously. So a mismatched pair pushed together on a road trip from South Central LA to Oakland. Justice, played by Jackson, and Lucky, played by Tupac, have only one thing in common: they can't stand each other. But as their friends Leisha and Chicago fight and make up in the back of the van, Justice and Lucky find themselves reluctantly drawn together. So it was okay. I give it a 3 because it was a good film. I just was expecting it not to be like it was for some reason. Next up, we got Liam Neeson in Cold Pursuit. Like this one quite a bit. We'll be keeping it for the collection. So his character, his son, dies at the beginning of the film, and he is a snowplow driver. So he goes out to get revenge for whoever killed his son. And it's a dark comedy, really enjoyable. Give this a 3.5. One of the better things that Neeson's done recently. Next up, I watched Flipper with Paul Hogan and Elijah Wood, who I'm a big fan of the Crocodile Dundee movies, so I watched this quite a bit growing up, not a ton, so I wouldn't say I had nostalgia for it. I don't really didn't remember too much of it, so this was a pleasant surprise on the revisit. I watched Free Willy a lot more than this, and this held up very well. I thought this was a really well done movie. So dive into the adventure in the sun-drenched Florida Keys with the action-packed family favorite Flipper. When Sandy Ricks, played by Elijah Wood, is sent to Coral Key to stay with his salty Uncle Porter for the summer, he never dreamed he would become best mates with a feisty orphan dolphin named Flipper. Yeah, definitely enjoyable. Giving this one a 3.5 out of 5. Next up, first time watch for me, we got Footloose. I'd always heard the song, never watched the movie. Kevin Bacon, great music. You got Laurie Singer, Diane West, and Jonathan Lithgow. Great cast. So they're in this town where they're not really allowed to do much of anything. Kevin Bacon and his family moved from Boston, I think, or Chicago. So Ren McCormick, a big city kid looking for some action after moving to a sleepy Midwest town. When he discovered the town's uptight minister, played by John Lithgow, outlawed rock music and dancing, he enlisted his best friend and the minister's rebellious daughter to abolish the outdated ban. So yeah, coming of age story, high school story, really well done. Great movie. Giving it a 4 out of 5. I need to watch the new one. I heard it's pretty decent too, but I was really happy I finally watched that one. Next up, we got James Caan and Kathy Bates in Misery. I need to upgrade this because this was a first time watch, directed by Rob Reiner, based on the Stephen King book, where James Caan is he's a writer, and he has a car accident, and this nurse, played by Kathy Bates, saves him, but she's also crazy. And this was really good. Definitely recommend this one if you haven't seen it. This is a 5 out of 5 film. Really good movie. Next up is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, based on the books. Didn't really like this. I do have the other one, so I'll probably try to watch those and then sell them as a lot if I don't like the others. I just didn't think it was that funny. Says the hysterically funny best-selling book comes to life in their smash hit family comedy. Greg Heffley is headed for big things, but first he has to survive the scariest, most humiliating experience of any kid's life, middle school. That won't be easy, considering he's surrounded by hairy, freckled morons, wedgie-loving bullies, and a moldy slice of cheese with nuclear cooties. Yeah, giving it a 2, did not care for it. Next up, this will also be for sale probably. I might need to give it another chance at some point. So we got Don't Be a Menace, which I know is like a scary movie or one of the other parody type of films. This has the Wayans brothers, Sean and Marlon. So, to South Central while driving your juice in the hood. Oh, I guess that's the full title. So yeah, I think part of the problem is I hadn't watched all the films that it's like poking fun at or parroting, which I hadn't seen. Drawing a blank on it. I don't know. It just got a Criterion release not too long ago. I'm picturing the artwork, but I can't think of the name of it. So I'd only seen at least like one of the Boys in the Hood I'd seen. I don't know. I just didn't think it was that funny, so I'm probably going to get rid of it. Oh. I feel like it's popping in my head and then I'm forgetting it. Next up, we watched Annie. Watched a decent amount growing up. I do really like a couple of the songs, especially Tomorrow and Hard Knock Life. There's also an interesting little interview with who played Annie. Like, this is the 30th anniversary, so I assume that's when they interviewed her. So another musical we watched. This one wasn't as long. Guess it doesn't say. I'll be keeping this for sure. I still enjoy it. Yeah, I got the soundtrack on my computer, and I didn't realize like how like the who's running the orphanage, how like she drinks bathtub gin and she's a drunk, and like some of the stuff she says in the movie was kind of surprising. But yeah, it's definitely a classic. Next up, we watched Snow Day. I think this was one of the days it snowed. We watched it. Still pretty funny. I'd only watched it a handful of times. So yeah, an unexpected overnight snowfall has made roads impossible, and that means no school. So I very rarely got snow days growing up. So definitely know what it's like for this film. A chance to win Heart of Popular Claire, or totally embarrass himself. For tenured Natalie, it's a chance to create something even better than a snow day, a second snow day. But to do that, she must stop Snow Plowman, played by Chris Elliott, who's pretty great in this. The town's relentless road clearing fiend. Better watch out, Snow Plowman. So yeah, it was fun. All right. Here's some recent stuff I watched. Just recently, first time watch for me, we got Freaky Friday with Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis. This is a remake of the Disney original, so a couple remakes that Lohan has done in her career. So they switched bodies. They didn't get along, or don't get along in the beginning of the film. She's in high school and is in a band, and her mom's she's a doctor, psychiatrist, and she's getting married. Her dad and her ex, she's widowed. The dad died, but she's getting married during the film, or coming in the film, to what's his name? Mark Harmon from NCIS and other things. So they switch bodies, and yeah, it's funny. It's not amazing, but definitely worth watching. I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Next up, we watched The First Wives Club with Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, and Diane Keaton. This is a first time watch. Only bought it because it was in the Paramount Presents line. This one, it's decent. So they're college friends. One of the college friends at the beginning of the film, she kills herself, and then writes a letter to the other friends from college, and they get together, and they find out that they're all in similar positions in their life, and they start this First Wives Club to get back at some of their significant others. So it's pretty funny. I think my wife enjoyed it a little more than I did, but it was still decent. I would give it a 3 out of 5. Next up, we watched a Lewis Switcher favorite. We got Up the Creek. This stars Tim Matheson, who was also in Animal House, as well as, I think, Stephen Furst. There was 2 people from Animal House, and I think the other one was Stephen Furst. Good soundtrack in this one. Very funny. Very similar to Animal House. They're basically the same type of characters, where barely scraping along in college, and it's like his 7th year or something like that. And their dean at their school says if they win this race that he'll have them graduate. So it's like this boat race and whitewater rafting, but it was pretty enjoyable. I'd give it a 3 as well, and I plan on keeping that one. And lastly, here to talk about, we got the 4K Kino release of Out of Sight. I watched this one in college and really enjoyed it. George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, directed by Steven Soderbergh. Not quite as enjoyable on the rewatch, but still good, and know why I watched it. I think I was just really pleasantly surprised when I originally watched it. So George Clooney is a bank robber who's in prison, and he ends up getting out, breaking out really, and Jennifer Lopez is a special agent of some sort, and she sees them while they're getting out and tries to capture them again, but he ends up kind of basically kidnapping her. And also has a really good supporting cast. Ving Rhames, Don Cheadle, Albert Brooks. This is a really good watch. I'm really happy to have this on Blu-ray from the Kino collection. I think I had a previous Blu-ray, but I just had the DVD. So I definitely plan on keeping this. I would give it a 4 out of 5. Recommend it if you haven't seen it. So yeah, sorry this is kind of a longer video, but going to help me get some stuff put away on the shelves and hopefully get some stuff sold. And I wanted to get caught up, so hopefully I do a better job of doing these monthly reviews. If you want to see some more reviews in the future, please let me know. I know it's not quite my strong suit, but hopefully I'll continue to get better at it, and hopefully recommended you some good stuff to watch. So yeah, this is Physical Media Man signing off. Physical Media will never die.
Physical Media Man. Physical Media Man. Physical Media Man.